Cory Booker recently had an interview on CNN about Israel's assault on Gaza, and that is how I will continue to refer to it because that's really what we're dealing with here. And it made me realize something else. I've talked about Cory Booker's, his financial, issues, his donation issues before in a video I had called Expose about Cory Booker. But there's something else I want to talk about and dive into with him as well. And also Raphael Warnock. He's another one that I think people do need to keep their eye on. These are two particular politicians that have basically been propped up, and I mean that willingly, propped up by the Democratic Party. And they are kind of seen as Black people that are supposed to represent Black people. And they're going to represent us in the Senate and in the House. But they are actually, signing on and approving legislation that is not really benefiting us. I've mentioned this before about Warnock, how he decided not to vote on key legislation that is important. And I've told you before about Cory Booker. They have decided to put the state of Israel first. And they're not alone. There's also Richie Torres. There's also Hakeem Jeffries. There's a number of them. But I want to get started with this recent interview here. Shout out to Case Study QB for this. Cory Booker on CNN. And for those who are not aware, Charles Barkley and Gayle King, Charles Barkley, former basketball player, and Gayle King, also known as Oprah's friend. Gayle was also a lawyer, but I'm just saying she's known as Oprah's friend. They actually have their own little show on CNN. Weird how that works, right? And they'll bring politicians on every now and then to talk about politic. Listen to this. This is Cory Booker's interview on CNN, Gayle King and Charles Barkley.
Israel, of course, is an ally. We all know that. But there's also a lot of concern about the humanitarian efforts that are happening there, or a lot of innocent civilians who are losing their lives. You've been very vocal about your support. You still feel that way?
Look, if you could look at what's happening in Gaza or Ukraine or Haiti or Sudan right now and not be torn up, not have it anguish your heart, then I don't know if you really have full humanity. We're a country right now that is witnessing hunger and suffering of innocent people in Gaza, as well as in a lot of other conflict zones. And this.
We're going to pause right here. Suffering of people in Gaza and people who are starving, right? Why are they still referring to Israel as an ally? Because I don't know about you guys, but my allies don't starve people. My allies don't make videos of themselves making racial slurs about Palestinian people. My allies don't behave that way. My allies wouldn't block humanitarian aid from getting to people that need it the most. So that's the first thing we need to take away from this conversation.
This is a tough time to lead. But President Biden on the world stage right now has stepped up in ways that have earned him the respect of our allies and peers all across the globe. Just talk to European leaders about what we're doing in Ukraine. And right now he is, and not him directly, but his team is negotiating between the terrorist organization Hamas and Israel to bring an end to this. He's called unequivocally, let's bring about a ceasefire, release of hostages, cessation of hostilities, open the gates to...
Pause. We're going to go back to the Ukraine part. This part's important right here because I want to show you what he's trying to do.
I don't know if you really have full humanity. We're a country right now that is witnessing hunger and suffering of innocent people in Gaza, as well as in a lot of other conflict zones. And this is a tough time to lead. But President Biden on the world stage right now has stepped up in ways that have earned him the respect of our allies and peers all across the globe.
Pause. So that part right there, President Biden earning respect of our allies all across the globe, right? So if they are your ally, shouldn't you already have their respect? Does that mean that little tidbit there from Cory Booker, does that mean that they did not respect Joe Biden from the beginning, from the get-go? Shouldn't they already have respect? Yeah. See, I'm really good at reading people And Cory Booker seems pretty nervous in this discussion. Now watch what he does. Watch the pivot.
Just talk to European leaders about what we're doing in Ukraine.
He wants to bring up Ukraine. Talk to European leaders about what he's doing in Ukraine. Gaza has nothing to do with Ukraine. People starving in Gaza has nothing to do with Ukraine. These are two separate issues, but he wants to pivot to that because there's not really a lot that you can say in reference to what Joe Biden has done for the Palestinian people in Gaza. Because as long as they're like, he called for a ceasefire, temporary ceasefire, by the way, that doesn't mean anything if you're still giving the state of Israel weapons to continue to slaughter the people. Well, he called for humanitarian aid to increase in Gaza. That doesn't mean anything if the aid is not getting in. So at that point, what should have happened is that President Biden should have decided to break all relations with Israel completely. Break all of it. We're giving them money every year. They're giving them weapons. That is what should have happened. But because Biden and any other of these politicians in DC are not willing to hold Israel accountable, they continue to do what they want to do. Let's bring back in Big-Eyed Cory.
And right now he is, and not him directly, but his team is negotiating between the terrorist organization Hamas and Israel to bring an end to this. He's called unequivocally, let's bring about a ceasefire, release of hostages, cessation of hostilities,
He's
open
called
the
upon
gates
that, Cory,
to...
but it still has not happened. That's what I think is so frustrating for so many people.
I think it's frustrating I think anybody who looks at it feels frustrated to see the kind of death and destruction in Gaza, the kind of violence that was endured by Israel, the worst.
Pause. What Gail did there, what Gail was trying to do was like, okay, Cory, yes, he called for these things to happen, but it hasn't happened. Israel is still doing whatever they want to do. They're not listening to the United States. So Cory doesn't know what to do from there. So he goes to, oh, but those hostages that they have, you know, that Hamas has and da-da-da. No, because what that does is that shows that Joe Biden is not an effective leader. Let's take a step back, guys. How many of you have had a job where you had a manager where they were your manager, but they really couldn't lead? Have you guys? I think everybody's had at least one. Raise your hand if you've had a job where you have had a manager where they were given that job of manager, but they actually could not lead. Just because you are president of the United States doesn't mean you are good at leading. Think about that. So when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to a lot of these conflicts that have happened under Biden's presidency, he's not good at leading. Joe Biden doesn't even know where he is half the time. Let's continue on here.
Death and destruction in Gaza, the kind of violence that was endured by Israel, the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust, the hostages, including Americans that are being held. These are not easy issues, and they shouldn't be judged on the politics of them. They should be judged on the work that needs to get done to resolve this conflict. And I'm grateful that President Biden is standing in the saddle in a very difficult time to lead globally, making tough calls and trying to drive this conflict to a resolution, to end the violence and resolve the situation in a way that ends this punctuated violence we've had there, whether it's what we just saw or the attacks on Israel in 2014 or what.
Let's pause there because he's going into word salad. Let me make something very clear. Famo says Sab ain't lying. Let me make something very clear, okay? When I'm talking about people having the ability to lead, and Cory is trying to skirt around the issue, right? Like he's talking about what's a very difficult time right now to lead. Doesn't matter. Leaders get things done. When you're in a leadership position, it's not always going to be easy. You think you're always going to have, an easy time? No, there are going to be difficult situations. There is going to be conflict, but real leaders know how to get things done. And this is one of those times where people can point to Joe Biden and they're starting to scratch their heads and they're saying, why isn't he getting this issue done? It's not just Gaza. Yes, it's also Ukraine and other things as well. But the point is, what it is showing you is that the person that we have sitting in the White House right now is not a good leader. Regardless if you are Democrat or Republican, I think we could all pretty much agree on that. And that's why we have some of these issues that we have. Now, let's go back just a little bit because he starts to get into a bunch of other stuff. Okay.
Standing in the saddle in a very difficult time to lead globally, making tough calls and trying to drive this conflict to a resolution to end the violence and resolve the situation in a way that ends this punctuated violence we've had there, whether it's what we just saw or the attacks on Israel in 2014 or what.
Now he wants to go back to the attacks on Israel in 2014. So first of all, again, making tough calls, that is part of being a leader. Sorry, but you're in a leadership position, every now and then you're going to have to make some tough calls. If Biden wasn't up to that, probably shouldn't have taken the job. Just is what it is. But he's going back to Israel 2014. Listen.
Hamas and Iran and their proxies have been doing. This is tough times, and I understand the political ramifications, Gail, but this is really a time that should pull on our humanitarian heart. We need to get a lot more humanitarian aid into Gaza.
So he was willing to go back to 2014 in reference to Israel. But every time it comes to what's happening to the Palestinian people, this all started October 7th. So if he can go back to, previous years with Israel, he can revisit previous years with the Palestinian people. So that's a revealing moment, folks. We'll show you why Cory is saying what he's saying.
But it also should pull on our larger ideals. As a guy who's traveled to the Arab countries in that region, from Egypt to Saudi Arabia to the UAE to Israel, everybody says, ultimately, we have to end the terrorism of Hamas, Iran, and their proxies. And
all those countries that he just mentioned, sorry to keep stopping, all those countries he just mentioned, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, they are all on the side of the United States. Remember that. Remember the ones that he's mentioned.
To the Arab countries in that region, from Egypt to Saudi Arabia to the UAE to Israel, everybody says, ultimately, we have to end the terrorism of Hamas, Iran, and their proxies, and ultimately get to a two-state solution where the Palestinian people have dignity and security and autonomy, and Israel has their security and autonomy as well. And that's what the Biden administration is really working towards.
Okay, and there goes the big eyes that reemerge, right? So Cory Booker is a really good BSer, right? Okay, so let me show you something about Cory, right? So we're going to go back in time. Max Blumenthal actually tweeted this out. Remember this, okay? So Max Blumenthal tweeted this October 13th last year. Pro-Israel millionaires brought Cory Booker into Newark to sell the city off to the highest bidder. Now he's rattling off talking points fed to him by AIPAC donors, painting apartheid Israel's war of extermination as an anti-fascist civil rights sit-in. Listen to this.
Hamas, terrorists, ISIS-like, Hitler-like folks who hate Jews and want to kill them. It's because we cannot let these terrorists, this ISIS-like, Nazi-like people win. And that's why the debate in America should not be a debate. We should have the crystal clarity to support Israel and to call out these Nazi ISIS-like folks who are targeting civilians with an attempt not just to kill and murder Jews, not just to kill and use Palestinians as human shields. To me, there should be no confusion about this for Americans.
All Zionists and AIPAC talking points. Now, why can't he call out the Israelis, the settlers, not just the IDF, but also the settlers that are destroying Palestinian homes in the West Bank? So let's pivot from Gaza and let's go to the West Bank, right? If you're conflicted about Gaza, this is why I get upset when people say it started October 7th. Why not make those same type of assumptions or those same types of accusations towards the Israelis that are burning Palestinian homes in the West Bank, that are kicking them out of their homes and that have those illegal settlements there? Why not make that? You can't make those kind of claims when you're in bed with AIPAC and you're getting a lot of money from them. So the point that I'm trying to make is that people like Cory Booker, people like Warnock, what they do, once again, these are people that they're black. Yes, they're black. but they're not in Congress to fight for people in the Black community. Hell, they're not even there to fight for people, just Americans, period. They have been bought and paid for to fight for the state of Israel. Same thing with Richie Torres. He fights harder for people in Israel than he does for people in the Bronx. And that's just a reality, folks. So they get guys like Cory Booker. You see him on TV like, hey, that's a Black guy. He's out there representing us. Don't look into the background and see that Cory Booker again went to Stanford, that they pull all these types, went to Stanford. You were a lawyer, tells the sob story about how his parents experienced housing discrimination when they were trying to buy a house in New Jersey. And that is how he's supposed to connect with you. Moves into a poor neighborhood in Newark, New Jersey to show you that he's down and he is one of you. This is all a game. Meanwhile, the entire time that he's in office, he's not fighting for the same people that the neighborhood that he moved into. Let him continue.
And I'll say this, not just as a United States Senator, not just as a patriot who would die for my own country, but I'm going to say this as a Black man. When you're Black in America, you understand the vulnerability within your own country you love.
Here it comes, right? So you would think he's making this statement and this is actually going to be connected to the Palestinian struggle. Nope.
I saw it as an adult on January 6th. Just like the Nazis, who didn't just destroy 6 million Jews, they destroyed gay people, gypsies. I will stand with people who are targets of hate. Hamas, like the Nazis and like ISIS, are people who target with hate.
Nazis had power, right? Didn't they have some form of power at that point in time? Weren't they in power? Okay. Hamas is not in power. The Palestinian people are not in power. The Israeli government is. The state of Israel is. The IDF has more power. Israel has a military. Gaza does not. I mean, these are do you see what he does there? As a Black man living in the United States, this is what they do. Now, he could have used that line and applied it to the Palestinian struggle, because when we look at the struggle, actually the Black struggle in the United States is more aligned with the Palestinian struggle. But you can't do that when you're in bed with the Israeli lobby, like Cory.
I stand with Jews. I stand with Muslims. I stand with gay folks. I stand with people right now who all have a common cause to stand against Hamas. The same hate that killed Blacks in a church in South Carolina are the same people who are wielding the same hate that killed in a synagogue. And so
Hamas is now compared to Dylan Roof.
We all need to take an understanding. Everyone has a responsibility to condemn the hatred of this ISIS Nazi like Hamas.
So I think you guys see where I'm going with this, because we're going back in time, or we're going all the way there. Max Blumenthal brought up another receipt. This inspiring protest reminded me of the time that Netanyahu pal Jared Kushner co-hosted a fundraiser for Cory Booker, one of the biggest AIPAC tools the Senate has ever known. Did you guys know about this? Did you know that, look at this, Trump to host fundraiser for Booker? That was July 16th of 2013. So you see what I mean when I tell you, when it comes to money, there's no difference between these two parties. Now he can get up there and make all those speeches about Trump and speeches against the Republican Party. But here he is. He had no problem when it came to raising money, rubbing elbows with them. No. Money doesn't see party. You get that, guys? Money doesn't see party. So that's who Cory Booker is, right? And then this was the speech in New Jersey when he was interrupted, which he needed to get. This is what happens.
I want to call out to everybody right now, these final hours, this is what's on the ballot. We should know in New Jersey how privileged we are. There are so many places in our country right now where people want to make sure that we have. This is what makes America great. The power to protest. The power to have free speech. The power of America.
I had to mute it because the music starts to come on. But, you know, he says, oh, this is what makes the America so great. The power of free speech. So that was protesters confronting Cory Booker. And Cory Booker, he's just so fake. He's just the fakest of the fake, but he's a part of the Black misleadership class. Cory Booker is not there fighting for us. In fact, Cory Booker actually attended a meeting with an AIPAC meeting where he actually explained to them how to recruit Black people. Listen to him sell us down the river. Let me make sure I got on the captions for this because I think okay, there we go.
Could you give us your own evaluation of the African-American leadership in the United States, and what is their feeling about Israel? And you know, because oftentimes I think locally, outside of New York, we find that there is become a greater identification, not with the history of Israel and what Israel has become, but with the sufferings of the Palestinians without any, you know, really understanding of the history with Israel. So, can you comment on African American leadership?
Well, blacks will always.
So this was a couple of years ago. Cory Booker tells AIPAC how to recruit African Americans. And look at this. This was uploaded 5 years ago by Zayed Giuliani. Okay, so pay close attention to this, because what they said to him is that they are noticing that there is a growing, increase of solidarity from the African American community with the Palestinian community. So they're asking Cory Booker, how do we get around that, and how do we recruit more Black people? So here is Cory Booker being a whole ass, he being a house Negro. Listen.
As Jews are, I think, always going to be some of the first to sign up to address the suffering of others. And we shouldn't be afraid of that within the Black community, within the Jewish community, within whatever community. But when it comes to justice for Israel and understanding any suffering within context, we need to be more vigilant than we're being right now. And I look, the Black community in many ways, I argue, I just was a speaker for the ADL's annual dinner. We always argue, every time I meet a Foxman, I always ask him about his studies of Black anti-Semitism, and is it higher than American anti-Semitism as a whole? We have interesting discussions, but if you live in the American world, there are streams within America, and many of them are streams within the mainstream that are racist and that are or have anti-Semitism in them. So we have to always be on guard to vigilantly fight against those streams. Is there streams of anti-Semitism in African American life? Yes.
You hear this? So you guys hear this? What he's telling them? Okay. Like, this is, thank you, Giovanni. It is simply disgusting. Like, why are you even in this conversation, right? Why are you telling them this? It goes on.
Is there streams of racism or bigotry in Jewish life? Yes. So my point is not, that's a given. The more important question to me is, what are we who are validly against that? What are we going to do? And so within the Black community, and I say this all the time, and you asked specifically about Black leadership. First of all, this excites me like never before, because Obama is a raindrop compared to the storm that's coming of young Black leaders around this country.
You guys hear that? He said Obama is a raindrop compared to the storm of Black leaders that's coming around this country. All the people that Cory Booker and friends have tapped on the shoulder to come in and do their bidding, right? So that's people like even Afro-Latino, people like Richie Torres could have been a part of that group. You see how this works, folks? So these people are already selected. They already tapping these people in on the shoulder, and you think they're going in there to help and advocate for their community. They're not.
Who are phenomenally qualified, phenomenally experienced. You're going to see more Black governors, you're going to see more Black senators, you're going to see more African American CEOs.
Listen, he said you're going to see more Black governors, senators, CEOs, but he's not talking about people just, earning those positions. He's talking about Black people going into those positions to serve AIPAC. You guys see this? He's talking about Black people going into those positions to serve Israel, not to serve the Black community. He already letting them know. Let me let you know who's coming down the pipeline.
This next generation is coming up behind my parents' generation. It's incredibly qualified, incredibly competent in making moves. So my only hope is with that, and so the people like to think that one Black person speaks for all Black America, which is so offensive to me in many ways. So I'm sorry, Jesse Jackson doesn't speak for me. Al Sharpton doesn't speak for me. It's just there's as much diversity within the Black community, dear God, as there is diversity within the Jewish community. 2 Jews in the town, we have 3 synagogues. Okay, so that's the reality that there is. So the only thing I can say is that this next group of African Americans are very visionary, very much full of hope, very value-based, as I know them. Harold Ford's, Arthur Davis's, and many of the people that AIPAC knows. And the only thing I think that, look, I think that AIPAC, it's critical that you continue to find, not just them when they're Congress people, you find those.
Listen to what he is saying. I think it is important, not when they're, let me go back just a little bit, because I think I skipped over it. The Congress people part is important.
Not just them when they're Congress people. You find those Black leaders when they're 22-year-olds at Oxford, when they're 24-year-olds as a city council president, and you go to them then and say,
you hear this? So he was basically telling them, this is how you recruit Black people. You don't find them when they're already congressmen or congresswomen. You find them when they're in their early 20s, which means they're tapping some of these people or finding some of them when they're in college. And here is House Negro Cory Booker telling them exactly how to do it, giving them all the tools. Isn't this crazy? Get them when they're young. That's what he's saying. He said city council president, so you can find them as city councilors.
Israel. Let us start showing you what this is about. That's what a key mission of AIPAC that we must continue, which is finding future leaders, young leaders in America. I'm at the Aspen Institute, and they've done a great job. They have this young leaders group. That whole group should go to Israel. These are the kind of things that need to be done ultimately for us to combat that. But please, I appeal to Jews all the time, please do not think that there are, just because such and such a Black leader gets up there, whether it be Reverend Wright or whomever, and says something stupid, like many leaders, period, do, and spread that around for the entire Black community, as much as Jews would never want to be held responsible for everything should go chaos.
So there's Cory Booker meeting with AIPAC, telling them, let me tell you how you get Black people. Get them when they're young. Don't wait until they're Congress people. Oh, and then also take them to Israel. The sellouts sell out. You see how that works? Again, Black misleadership class, but he's not alone. There's also Raphael Warnock. Now I want to show you a speech that Raphael Warnock made about Palestine in support of the Palestinian people. Now, this was prior to his election. This is before 2020. Let's go ahead and bring in this. And I want you to tell me if this sounds like the same person today. Listen.
It's been a tough week. The administration opened up the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. Standing there, President's family and a few mealy-mouthed evangelical preachers
members of the Knesset, members of the IDF,
who are responsible for the mess that we found ourselves in,
the executive branch of the United States government,
both there and here,
to welcome the leaders,
misquoting and misinterpreting the scripture, talking about peace. Meanwhile, young Palestinian sisters and brothers who are struggling for their very lives, struggling for water, and struggling for their human dignity, stood up in a non-violent protest, saying if we're going to die struggling. And yes, there may have been some folk who were violent, but we ought to know how that works out. We know what it's like to stand up and have a peaceful demonstration and have the media focus on a few violent uprisings. But you have to look at those Palestinian sisters and brothers who are struggling for their human dignity, and they have a right to self-determination. They have a right to breathe free. We need a two-state solution where all of God's children can live together. If we can't live together in the holy city, what in the world are we talking about? We hear everybody, Arabs and Cretans, isn't that what the text says? Speaking about God's deeds of power, but we saw the government of Israel shoot down unarmed Palestinian sisters and brothers like birds of prey. And I don't care who does it, it's wrong. It's wrong to shoot down God's children like they don't matter at all. And it's no more anti-Semitic for me to say that than it is anti-white for me to say that black lives matter. Palestinian lives matter. We need a Pentecostal moment.
Great speech there. That is from Reverend at the time, Reverend Raphael Warnock. That was before he was elected to the U.S. Senate. So that was, of course, prior to October 7th, way before October 7th. Now, let's see where he is today. Okay. Senator Raphael Warnock has received greater than $928,000 from the pro-Israel lobby since elected in 2020. Warnock voted for the spending bill that cut UNRWA funding and consistently votes for unconditional military aid to Netanyahu. He currently has 0% score on the Congressional Democrat Palestine tracker. You should follow this account on Twitter. They are tracking AIPAC. So after that one, awesome speech from Warnock, once he ran for office, starting in 2020, they got him too. Another member of the Black misleadership class. And that's why you don't hear him saying anything about it today. And you won't hear him saying anything about it tomorrow. That's how easy they can be bought. Just like that. If he is your representative, maybe you should reach out to his office and ask him why he's taking money from AIPAC. And so if you follow this account on Twitter, they're tracking everybody. It's not just Democrats. They're tracking Democrats and Republicans. It is the AIPAC tracker. You follow these guys at Track AIPAC. They're serious. So if you follow them, you'll be able to see they got Marco Rubio. I love how they made these pictures for everybody. John Fetterman. And we can go on. But follow that account on Twitter because they're exposing them all one by one. Harriet Hageman, going on. The Black misleadership class. And what's frustrating to me is that kids, they will see a Cory Booker and they will see, Raphael Warnock, and they'll look up to them. And, it's just like when kids looked up to Obama and they said, oh, a Black guy is president. That means there is hope for me. So people will look up to Cory Booker and Raphael Warnock, not realizing what they did to get to where they are. Just like Oprah. I told you this. People look up to Oprah, not thinking about what she did to get to where she is. So that's the problem. People will see them as pillars of the Black community. Meanwhile, while they are in office, they are voting on legislation that is not in favor of the Black community, but is in favor of the state of Israel. They talk a good game. They've been coached to do so. Raphael Warnock, this is the guy. I mean, let's go back, guys. Let's do some thinking. This is the guy, right? Isn't this the guy that Joe Biden told you to vote for so you can get that $2,000 check? How'd that work out for some of you? How'd that work out? Did you get $2,000 from Joe Biden for that stimulus check? This is the guy he told you to vote for. We cannot continue to be misled or fooled by the Black misleadership class. Let's go to some of the comments here. XJW says, Barkley talked shit about my HBCU. He claimed my president scammed him. SMH, that man is a liar. Interesting. Thank you for the super chat. Where's the love? These Black Democratic political leaders in Congress got me F up on this Gaza issue. Disgusting. SMH. Thank you, Stu. Worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. Israel is not Jews. Israel is a colonial state that constantly attacking, oppressing Palestinians. Thank you for that, Stu. Ad Kid says, Sabby, I saw a big freeway billboard that read, Israel is killing one school bus of children every day. I had never seen anything like that before. The times are changing 100%. Wow. That's huge, a kid. That is huge. Thank you, New York Varsity. 12 Democrats voted against significantly cheaper drugs. One of them was Booker. Big Pharma paid him a lot. AIPAC got him for cheap. There you go. Katrina says these lying SOBs. Be Easy says, no, it's not crazy. It's normal. 99.9% of Black politicians are buck broken bootlickers. Joy says, like recruiting for the CIA. There you go. Robert says, Sabby, what if AIPAC approaches you with $2 million? Number one, they wouldn't. But even if they did, approach me for what? I'm not a politician. I wouldn't take money from them. I don't even take sponsorships on this channel. Like, come on. All right, guys, go ahead and smash that like button. Thank you very much. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. Dun, dun, dun.